If your focus feels like it's getting weaker over time, it's not because of discipline. Your discipline isn't fading. The problem is that our brain is receiving so much stimulation that it's throwing our chemistry off. It's rewiring our brain for attention deficit, for other problems, for mood problems, for sleep problems. The problem isn't technology itself. It's the frequency and the intensity that we're stimulating our brain with on a day-to-day basis. We go from one to-do list to the other, from one screen to the other, often doing things in our screens, receiving stimuli that our brain has never seen before, or it usually only sees in times of danger, of high stress. And what is that is doing is rewiring our brain in a way that is making our ability to focus, to push through obstacles, to sustain our motivation. It's creating obstacles in that way. It's throwing our dopamine off in a sense. It's creating what I call this dopamine dysregulation loop. But remember, you don't have to worry because what you have to only do is identify the patterns, reestablish different habits, bring back balance to that nervous system so that now your nervous system is operating in a better way, in a peak state. So I'm going to share a quick PowerPoint. And again, if you find value in this video, please share with somebody you think may benefit. Drop us a like and give us a follow so that you can get these weekly videos that will really help you to have much more success in the AI-powered world that's coming. In the digital age, we're establishing habits that are really throwing our nervous system off. And remember, I've said this many times before, the nervous system is the key to longevity. The health of the brain is the key to longevity. It's not muscular fitness, a lot of the things that we often focus on. All those other things matter, but what matters the most is what regulates everything from a top-down fashion. So just keep that in mind. What we started at Zen Brain Academy is for the benefit of every single human in the digital age, in this AI power world that we're moving into. So remember, why does your focus keep getting weaker over time? It relates to this digital dopamine loop that I've talked about before. What I'm going to discuss today is not a moral argument. This is based on science, on decades of experience. I've been actually talking about this for well over 20 years when there was no AI, when social media was just starting. People weren't having this addictive issue with the cell phone that's, throughout the world is going on, where now our neural networks are being, in a sense, conditioned through our use of these digital devices. It's also not an anti-technology. I use technology all the time. I'm not anti-technology, but what I will tell you is that we need to, as humans, develop a different relationship, find more balance. And there's a lot of ways that you can do this that we teach, obviously, in Zen Brain Academy that are extremely important for the health of our brain and, of course, also our own longevity, our mental well-being, so on and so forth. Uh, this is also not a diagnosis claim, even if I may mention neurodevelopmental disorders, attention deficit, autism spectrum, that in my opinion, there is a relationship between the increase of technology use. I may not mention all of it today, but there is a relationship between them and some of the struggles that we are having as humans that I have also had myself in the past with regards to our nervous system. Our nervous system is not developing normally because we're not giving it stimuli that the nervous system normally sees. In addition, this isn't a fear-based claim. There's no reason to be fearful. There is an easy way in which you can regulate your nervous system to bring it into balance, as this image over here illustrates on the right. So let's examine the impact of high-frequency stimulation on our attentional systems that are extremely vulnerable. Our nervous system is being hijacked without us realizing it. And so the prefrontal cortex that's in the front of the nervous system over here, that's important for so many things related to human function, from planning, decision making, being able to push through, to stay motivated in the face of adversity, because it's important for effort allocation, for learning how to reinforce. So as I keep doing something, should I reinforce? Or should I keep pushing? I'm learning what I should reinforce. How should I allocate my effort? Should I stay motivated with this? I need to stay focused, locked in, not distracted. Knowing that anticipating that there will be a reward at the end of it. Maybe I'm working really hard for a promotion and that's my reward, but that promotion will not come tomorrow or the next day or even the next year. It may be years down the road. Do I have what it takes to push through? Because dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's very important for knowing, is it worth pursuing? Is it worth putting forth the effort that I need to put to be able to get out something out of what I'm doing? So am I willing to work through something? It's also important for regulating mood and other things. So the neurochemistry behind feeling good, pushing through obstacles, so on and so forth, these are finely tuned. And if I'm throwing them off, it really throws me off in the long term. For example, practice of meditation is very difficult. Why? Because it requires us to do something that's very unnatural. Our nervous system, our neurochemistry is not designed for that. It requires a lot of focus, a lot of perseverance, a lot of patience, things that we often lack because we're so used to being unfocused, multitasking, a lot of strong stimuli that when I sit and I try to regulate, really meditation and concentration are training of the nervous system. I'm training my neural circuits to release chemicals in a way that allows me to sustain that focus, to remain very locked in. And oftentimes the problems that we have is that we've been doing things that have trained our nervous system for the exact opposite of what we want in our lives. So just keep that in mind. It's not something that we cannot achieve. It's just that we're not training our nervous system the right way. All of a sudden, there's this kind of repeat cycle related to the digital device. It leads to spikings. I spike. I see something that grabs my attention. There's that dopamine spike. Then I swipe. I like that. I want something else. I flick. Then social media, let's say, I go and look at something else. And that leads to a short-term reward. That reward inevitably leads to a crash. And then that crash leads me to seek a new stimulus to get that juice going again, to get another spike. And the issue isn't one spike, it's that repeated interaction of spike, swipe, stimuli, crash, and it just keeps repeating over and over again. It's conditioning my brain towards what? Short-term rewards, such that if I later on am doing something that is not short term, it requires a lot more effort, I will likely give up. I will get frustrated. I will get more unfocused, less determined to push through the highs and lows of life. And then I won't be getting those long term gains that I want. Remember, the long term rewards are the difficult ones, but those are the really good ones that you really want in your life. So there's some neuroadaptation happening here. There's this fluctuating spike crash pattern that's happening where I get these hits, drops, hit, drops, and eventually this can start to plateau and it makes it harder for me to reach that same baseline. There's receptor sensitivity adjustment. What that means is that when dopamine gets released, your nervous system has protein receptors that bind the dopamine. And your nervous system, if it's receiving these sharp releases of dopamine, will adjust. It may remove the receptor. It may make it easier for the nervous system to flush out the dopamine. So the dopamine is there, but it's released in a large amount, but it's flushed out quickly. So it's like a quicker hit minded pattern. And I'm entraining my brain to have this kind of quick hit. Baseline shifts, effort feels harder and harder. The threshold for something new to stimulate me becomes more difficult. And then the brain is adapting to what? The frequency and not that longevity that we want. And that stimulation, if constant, leads to a kind of like adaptive regulation that occurs actually in everything that we do. I'm taking a medication, my nervous system, my body's going to adapt, my liver adapts to flushing out the drug. Like even a pharmaceutical drug or a recreational drug. If the way that I eat, the way that I think, if I'm constantly frustrated, depressed, angry, my nervous system adapts because all those things are altering my chemistry. Remember, thought, thoughts will yield neurochemical release through certain axis that goes through my bloodstream, will act on a variety of different receptors throughout my body, and my body's sensing all of that, and it adapts. And oftentimes, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is leading to my nervous system releasing chemicals in a way that is regulating, adapting me in a way that then gets in the way of me having the things that I want in my life. For example, I don't realize that as I'm working, I'm activating my stress pathway. That is leading to the release of stress hormones. And my body's adapting, and that adaptation is leading me to having more vulnerabilities, more cognitive impairment, more sleep issues, and it's getting in the way of the things that I really want to sleep better, to feel better, to be more productive. So just remember that underlying everything, all my thoughts, all my actions is chemistry. All right. And that chemistry is changing you. Why are some brains more sensitive than others? Could be genetic. Not everybody's born the same way. I may have pre-existing attention deficiencies. Maybe when I was born, the way that my parents brought me up, I'm just more vulnerable to inattentiveness. I'm a little bit more careless, a little bit more impulsive. If now I'm with digital devices and I'm regulating my nervous system in a certain way or dysregulating it, it will make me much more vulnerable. A developing brain is more vulnerable. And if you are a parent, this should worry you because digital device exposure at a young age will lead to neurodevelopmental issues being more obvious. So if somebody already is kind of socially awkward, socially withdrawn, introverted, then you put them on a device that's causing them to disconnect from people, to be more focused on a device, to hide away from social interactions, not read facial cues, etc. The brain will not develop normally. It will not be pushed to develop that side. This is actually, even with somatosensory information, there's this interesting case of this young girl that grew up in a very wealthy family. Everything was done for her. She was dressed, fed. It was really exaggerated to the point where she really wasn't touching stuff. She didn't develop the somatosensory system normally. It was atrophy. She had to then re-engage that to learn it because she would touch stuff and really wouldn't sense it and feel it. So our nervous system is very vulnerable, especially at a younger age. And if I grow up like that, even as an adult, I'm going to struggle with difficulties because I already was exposed to it. So you want to be more mindful about your interaction. If you have children, you have to regulate their use of digital devices because it's affecting their neural development, their neurochemistry in ways that's going to impact them long term. That may make them vulnerable to having attentional issues or social developmental issues that are really nervous system issues at the end of the day. Our nervous system may be loaded with stress. That makes us more vulnerable. Stress throws off the prefrontal cortex. That's the same area that I just talked about earlier is being impacted by our digital interactions. And it's the same area of the nervous system, the prefrontal cortex, that's regulated by dopamine and other important neurochemicals that we are dysregulating with our digital age habits. So again, not everybody's impacted equally. Maybe I'm a lot more focused and I'm a little bit sturdier when it comes to my digital age interactions. Maybe I'm more outgoing. And for me to be interacting socially, to be playing video games for a few hours doesn't impact me as much as somebody who's already vulnerable. So that's something to keep in mind. It's where I'm starting off of, and then that interaction can really make a huge difference. So often we're going from focus to fragmentation. This is why I've emphasized a lot about multitasking being a myth. Our nervous system can only focus on one thing. If my focus is already shallow, if my prefrontal cortex that also regulates not just focus but impulse control, I'm constantly switching and switching, unfocused, then I won't be able to sustain the effort like I explained. I'm much more fragmented. And I've talked about in other videos and on my social media channels on Instagram, on Twitter, etc. I've talked about how every time that you switch, you have to reboot. So if I'm really locked in, my nervous system starts to power down, power down, power down. It becomes easier to do whatever I'm doing. But the moment that I drift off and come back, I have to restart. It's almost like an effortful process. It may not be a full restart, but it's like you took 10 steps forward and now you took 5 steps back. And now to get to back to 10, you have to do 5 more steps. You're wasting energy in a sense every single time. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It will lead to mental fatigue. When dopamine is unstable, your attention becomes unstable. This is also for norepinephrine and other important neuroregulatory systems. If you search my name, Brian P. Ramos, as P for Paul, and you search prefrontal cortex, you're going to find articles there. I've done research on this, and we studied how to alter it chemically, but then I went on this path to figure out how we could do this without pharmaceuticals, without technology, without it being so expensive, how to build the right base. And that's what I teach in Zen Brain Academy. Attention deficit is really a training of brain networks. You train your brain networks towards lack of focus, narrow bandwidth, then you won't have sustained drive and motivation. You're going to be very inattentive. But if you train it for another way, like I explained earlier with meditation, for example, then you will train it differently. The problem lies in that most people aren't able to meditate because if you're starting from so far away from focus and this ability to be able to sit and attend, let's say for meditation, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very challenging. That's why in Zen Brain Academy, we teach a systematic approach where you build slowly until you can dominate meditation. Most people can't. Therefore, you got to recognize where you are, and then you do things that are somewhere in between no regulation and supreme regulation, and you do things that are going to get you progressively closer to that kind of really peak state. And so you have to build slowly. Maybe you're doing breathing instead of meditation a few times a day. Eventually, you graduate to training your concentration, to practice to hold it for longer and longer periods until eventually you regulate your neural networks, your prefrontal cortex, your dopamine, and other things to the point where you can actually do that. So there's an important distinction here that I want to make that I'm not making a proof of causation here. I'm not saying that digital devices are the cause of attentional problems, of social problems. It's not a claim that devices are causing this. It's not also an anti-modern stance. It's about regulation capacity. We are not training our nervous system. We haven't regulated to hold that attention for long periods. We're amplifying maybe existing vulnerabilities, as I explained in an earlier video, not in a video, in an early slide, through our digital age habits. It's all about the neurochemical drivers for attention and how your brain will respond to what you're doing and how you're driving that neurochemistry. If I'm driving that neurochemistry towards shallow interactions, towards being focused for short bouts, then that's what I'm going to stimulate. But you can restore stability by breaking this up and down cycle, reducing frequency, increasing recovery periods, having breaks in between where you're doing things to bring back stability, to rebuild your attentional capacity. Motivation and focus return when you have like a more baseline chemistry. Your baseline chemistry has been shifted towards inattentiveness, leading you to seek out that same pattern of interactions to keep that boosting level up. But then it wanes, and then you try to boost it up, and then it wanes, and you try to boost it up, and that you're training it in a way that's not sustainable. So what I want you to start off with is a 2-hour recovery window. You're going to have a structured device-free block. You can do this whenever you want. Midday, evening, you could break it into two windows or more if it works better for you. Maybe you do 4 30-minute windows, one in the beginning of the day, one at midday, maybe after lunch. You have lunch and then you go for a short walk to allow digestion to occur. Maybe in the afternoon, you go for an exercise for 30 minutes an hour. Get that 2-hour recovery window where you're not stimulating your brain. Maybe at night, You have a window where you put some relaxing music on, spend time with your partner, or read a book, or practice mindfulness or breathing or what have you. Things that we teach in Zen Brain Academy. Nature contact as well is excellent, that I've talked about in other videos. Avoid high frequency stimulation. That includes watching a high stimuli movie, an action flick, let's say, being on social media, so on and so forth. It's not about deprivation. What you want is recalibration. I also talk about digital detox in other videos on social media on YouTube. You want digital detox periods, which is related to this. You could do digital detox, for example, on the weekends, maybe a half a day or a whole day where you just disconnect. You disconnect from device. Think of like going on a retreat. Sometimes people will go on a retreat and they'll disconnect and they'll be getting massages and doing yoga and eating healthy. And it's a detox, not just from digital devices, but maybe from their habits and their patterns where they're eating in an unhealthy way, where they're going rush, 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 they're stressed out, etc. And they're trying to recalibrate. But even if I do that and then I go back to what I normally do, it doesn't solve the problem. You're going to continue to induce problems because that short-term period of a week or two where you got off and you disconnected will not make up for the rest of the year. All right. So you have to be consistent with whatever you do. So remember, this is a nervous system conversation. Dopamine dysregulation is leading to all the problems that I talked about in this video. And what you want is to optimize your nervous system through recovery cycles. Attention isn't just a cognitive process, it's physiological, it's neurochemical. And you can train your brain to a high focus state. Otherwise, you wouldn't see people in the world that are high focus. A Zen master, a yoga master, somebody who's really high focus, high performer, who's an entrepreneur or whatever. These are individuals that have trained themselves into this state, and you can have the same thing as well. I promise you, no matter where you start, join Zen Brain Academy and I'll teach you how. Digital devices are designed to hijack your nervous system on purpose, in a sense. It's a social experiment. It's a neural experiment that has been shown to be very successful. And now businesses use it to their advantage to catch your attention and to be able to hijack it and to steal your energy, value where you put your attention. So remember, awareness leads to regulation, leads to stability, leads to focus. That digital loop is reversible. Your brain is adaptive, not just for going in the wrong direction, also for going in the direction that you want. The same plasticity that's going to shift you out of focus and calmness is going to restore that and restore an optimized state that can really level up your productivity, your sleep, your health, your longevity, etc. Remember, train the system, not the habit. And at Zen Brain Academy, we teach that dopamine stabilization, attention retraining, nervous system regulation, sustainable digital balance. How do you do it in a way where you don't have to eliminate technology? You regulate the nervous system that's interacting with it, because technology and AI, I should mention this, are extremely important in the world that we're living in. There's going to be a bifurcation of the haves and the have-nots. And it's not just a financial aspect, it's going to be an AI technology aspect. Who dominate that AI and technology? So you don't want to reject it. You want to learn how to integrate it in a way that's balanced and that doesn't throw you off, so that you can, in a sense, outproduce others, the superhumans and the ones that are just the regular humans that are not going to have access to this, to be able to do things and produce value in the digital age that's coming. So safeguard your brain. You will be a super performer with amazing health, amazing focus, amazing longevity, and you can do all of that. I promise you. Start today, 2 weeks for free. Zen Brain Academy. Take care. Stay Zen.